That's an interesting point. Yeah, here's a counterpoint. Shut the fuck up. I know I'm not swearing on this one as much. 2, 3, 4. Beep, beep, bop, bop, beep, doo. Beep, bop. Hi, my name's Jimmy. I went to the comic book store. Picks of the week. Ha ha ha. Well, I accidentally just took a photograph of me and talked to the camera for 10 minutes. And it's official. This day can jump up my butt. All right. Today at the funny book store, I bought XRay Robot number 2. This is by the Allreds, the finest Mormon husband and wife couple working in comic books today. I don't know if their special underwear has anything to do with how well they do funny books, but I'd rather they not, change that and mess with the formula, such as it is. I'm a big fan of Mike Allred and his wife Laura, obviously. But and this was, I don't really remember much about this book. From what I can vaguely recall, our hero travels into some sort of alternate dimension and his consciousness ends up in the brain of a cyborg. Something along those lines. The first issue of this came out was the very last week that Diamond distributed new comic books before shutting down for the pandemic. But I don't know if you guys read this in the papers. We're all fucking dead. So why not put out the rest of this? Also, it occurs to me, and not for the first time, that even if there wasn't a pandemic on, there's a good chance I would have had to wait 7 months in between issues. Because that's the kind of guy Mike Allred is. He doesn't work on anyone else's schedule. And there are really only a handful of artists, I could probably count on one hand, that are worth that kind of wait. Allred, Frank Quitely, Jeff Darrow, Frank Miller when he's on, but that hasn't been for fucking 30 years. So there's like a handful of artists that I will wait for, and Allred is definitely one of them. Also this week, I bought this, the Giant Size X-Men #1 tribute to Len Wein and Dave Cockrum. This is a tribute to Len Wein and Dave Cockrum. So this is like as you can tell from the cover, this is a mock-up, it's an homage to the cover of Giant Size X-Men #1 from 1979. Somewhere in there. And that is a short X-Men history lesson for you. The Uncanny X-Men started in 1963 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, eventually passed the ropes onto I believe Roy Thomas was the next person to take over script, and then like Arnold Drake drew it for a while. Is that it? I want to say Cockrum came in. But long story short, by the time the early 70s rolled around, the book was all but canceled. And in a move that I don't think I've ever... Maybe it says in the How book somewhere, but for whatever reason, in the early 70s, since X-Men wasn't selling that well, they didn't cancel it. They reduced it to coming out every other month, and it was only reprints. So there's a whole chunk of issues of the X-Men that are just reprints. I have a few of them. They're pretty easy to get a hold of because they're reprints. Nobody gives a poop. But then Len Wein was like, why don't you let me take a run at some of these new characters, or like, Wolverine that he had created or co-created with Herb Trimpe over to the Incredible Hulk, number 180, 181. Why don't we put him in the X-Men and these other characters? I think like Nightcrawler. Was this Nightcrawler's first appearance? I legitimately don't know. But they did a storyline in this Giant Size X-Men #1 where the new team goes to rescue the old team from the clutches of Krakoa, which is a mutant in the shape of an island, and which is now the home of the X-Men. So this is obviously a watershed moment in X-Men history, and this is not the first tribute that they've done to Wein and Cock. Well, it might be the first one where they've named it, but I mean, they've done homage covers to that cover a ton, and I don't know. I don't know what's going to be in it. Like a lot of these giant size books, some of them, actually, that's for the most part, giant size and annuals and 100-page giants, etc., aren't usually like in continuity. They're more considered to be like bonus books, like not books you need to own, but if you want. But they've been doing a lot of these giant size X-Men lately, and I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say they're absolutely necessary, but they do tie into the current storylines in the X-Men. And this is like, I think I've mentioned before, this is the first time I've bought every single X book that they're publishing currently since like, I think it was the last, I think it was the last time they rebooted everything, which at this point is just like every couple years. But yeah, so like last time they rebooted it, I started buying the whole line, and then but it wasn't long before I was dropping like Generation X, and there was another couple X books that were just kind of Iceman was terrible. I'm still trying not to talk shit, even though I am in a mood. That's all I got to say on that one, I guess. And then finally, this is the book I'm definitely most excited for, ShangChi #1. This is a mini series. I think it's only going to be 5 issues, which sucks. Oh, also they're doing these really nice tributes to Chadwick Boseman. There's also a very nice back cover tribute to him. Same age as me. God, lucky dude. He gets to play Black Panther, and he gets to die before I do. ShangChi is the master of Kung Fu, and this is one of my favorite Bronze Age books. In fact, it's been a while. I was reading the entire run on the Marvel Unlimited app, and I kind of put it down for a minute, and it's been a while since I've gotten back to it. But yeah, this is written by Gene Luen Yang, who I hope is going to be at Marvel more. He's mostly been a DC guy up to this point, and he is very much, he very much writes for I don't want to say he writes for an Asian audience, but his books have a lot of Asian representation in them, which is nice to see. And he's a really good writer. I don't know what like his new Superman over at DC was really good. It was one of the most underrated books that DC's done in a while. And now he's writing one of my favorites. So, and yeah, I mean, there's not much to Shang-Chi. He's the master of Kung Fu. In the earliest days, the story was he is the son of Fu Manchu, which they could never actually name because he does that character. That copyright belongs to Sax Rohmer or his estate, or at least it did in the 70s. They were able to use the name Fu Manchu, though, because they did give him credit. I'm assuming they had to pay his estate something. So in a very typical superhero move, they made Shang-Chi Fu Manchu's son. But then it turns out he's not being raised in Hong Kong after all. He's being raised in a replica of old China beneath the streets of New York City. And once Shang-Chi realizes that his father is evil and has been using him to assassinate innocents instead of, enemies of his father or whatever, he rebels and goes out into the world determined to make his own way. He gets mixed up with some British spies for some reason, and then that's where all his adventures kind of take place. And that's like pretty much it through the 70s. How far did I get? I think I've read up into like the 60s, so I'm like it started in issue 13, I want to say, and then because of Bronze Age reasons, which are too boring for even me to go into. It doesn't matter. Picks of the week. Ba-da-ba-dee-ba-doo. Picks of last hiya. So last week I read 3 books that were all new to me and 3 books that I'm probably going to keep reading. We'll just have to see. First, I read Miles to Go. This is another crime book from Aftershock. And I think I was saying this last week. There was a time where I would just any crime fiction, especially in comics, I would just devour. But I think I've kind of lost my taste for it. This is really good, though. And I was talking about the writer, B. Clay Moore, and kind of not being overly enthused for his scripts. But reading this again, I'm like, oh, no, he is good. He's not flashy. But there's a lot of comic book writers that I really, really like that kind of fly under the radar because they're not highly stylized. They just turn out really, really good comic books. And it sounds like I'm kind of shitting on them a little bit, but I'm really not. Guys like Frank Thierry and guys like even Chuck Dixon, although he can be flashy. Peter David I would consider one of those guys, even though he's very, very well known. And a better writer than most. But yeah, more is right up there, and this was really good. It's about a woman who was raised as a criminal, but has since, tried to get out of the life, which is a lot of crime stories kind of sent around trying to get out. And then, of course, the plot fix. Also, I read The Unkindness of Ravens, and this was good too. The script was good. I felt really bad reading it because I was like kind of implying that Panosian, since he's such a great artist, couldn't possibly be a good writer, but he is. And it is like I guessed. It's very X-Men-esque. In this instance, it's more like The Craft, that movie The Craft, which I actually never saw, but I think if you saw the trailers, you'd probably get it. New girl in school, and she's kind of torn between. Well, for one thing, she looks exactly like a girl that had just gone missing. She's not her, apparently, but she's already getting weird looks. And then over here you have the popular girls, the Heathers or whatever, and then over here you have the Ravens, the gothy girls. And so they're kind of both trying. It's like a Mean Girls thing, but with witchcraft. So it's pretty good. I'm gonna definitely. I'm looking forward to future issues. This was probably the best thing I read out of these three, though, is Sun Eater #1. Now, I said last week I had no idea who Dylan Sprouse is. Apparently, he's one of those Disney Channel actors. So it's probably good that I didn't know who he was. It'd be weird if I did. I still am not 100% if I do know who Joe Harris is, but that name definitely sounds familiar. This was a really fun Viking book, and the Viking kind of subgenre has been something that I've gotten more and more, like very slowly into more over the years. There was Northlanders from Vertigo. There was a book on Image just called Viking, which was like an oversized magazine. Really nice stuff. I don't know if they ever even collected that, but I like just having the single issues of stuff like that. Sword Daughter from Dark Horse. There's like there was one on Avatar called Wolf's Bane, I want to say. No. Wolf's Blood, something like that. And of course there's what was the one that Jason Aaron did? Well, Jason Aaron did do his Conan story finally. I could have swore Jason Aaron, and Jason Aaron is very much a Viking himself. He's like a massive dude, shaved head, huge beard. Very gentle giant, though. He's like, I've met him once or twice. Very sweet man. I've seen him talk in like interviews and stuff. He's like, his voice is even kind of deceptively. It's not dainty, but he's kind of quiet, That has nothing to do with this book at all, does it? No. So yeah, this was just real good Viking stuff. A lot of macho posturing, a lot of vaguely Shakespearean dialogue. It reminded me a lot of like early Thor when, Stan Lee or Larry Lee or whoever was writing him, or Jack Kirby maybe, was writing him to sound like Shakespeare, late Yea Verily and all this stuff. Sun Eater's not quite as community college as all that, but it's a lot of fun. Those picks of last week. All right, well, I'm going to go read comics for a while because, boy, am I in a mood. But I'll see you back here next week then, if I'm not mistaken, and I probably am. 2, 3, 4. I'm not going to apologize.